what's up?
Now just recording a podcast. What's up with you?
Oh, not too much. You know what, though?
What?
You need a counselor.
Thanks, so do you.
I do need a counselor. You're right.
So welcome back to You Need a Counselor. I'm Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder of Heart and Solutions. We are a strength-based counseling agency here in Iowa. If you are in Iowa, give us a call. We do in-office mental health counseling. We're also doing telehealth right now anywhere in the state. And then we also do our in-home behavioral health counseling services for kids of all ages. We accept all insurance types and also crime victims compensation funding. So if you have been the victim of a crime and there has been a police report filed, you are eligible for up to $5,000 of mental health services to benefit you in processing through and coping with that crime and the healing process for that. So give us a call. Let us know that you need us.
I'm Chrissa. I am the vice president at Heart and Solutions. So I am in charge of that in-home behavioral health counseling with kids department that Julie was talking about. So we work with kids ages 4 to 18 on different behavioral skills, and we go in-home or can do telehealth or in the office or school as well for those services. And then this is You Need a Counselor. So the mission of our podcast is that we are designed for people curious about counseling, but who have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So we post on Sunday nights. So we ask that you would save up your laundry, just do it all on Sundays, put it all away while you're listening to us. Nobody needs to do laundry throughout the week. Why stretch it out? Why make it worse than it needs to be? Do it at one time. We will be there with you. You can listen to us while you're doing it. Brenden's face, I feel like.
I know, that's why I'm laughing.
The laundry part.
He's like, who does laundry?
Who does laundry ever? Who does laundry on a Sunday? Why? Okay, so we post on Sunday nights at 5 o'clock. So give us a listen there, or you can listen to us on Monday mornings so that you can have an entire week to get in touch with a counselor, call your counselor, or schedule with your current counselor if you haven't scheduled with them for the week. All right, so our guest today is Brenden from MasterTalk. So apparently if you talk to Brenden, this is what you need to say. You need to say, hello, Brenden from MasterTalk. It reminds me of Jake from State Farm.
I'm good friends with her, actually.
Jake from State Farm. If you meet Jake, you just say, hey, Jake from State Farm. So Brenden from MasterTalk. And we're going to get into what MasterTalk is so you guys can hear all about that. But welcome to the show, Brenden. It's great to have you here.
Of course, such a pleasure to be here, you two. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Brenden is from Montreal in Canada.
We didn't know.
we didn't know where it was from. And then Brenden's last name, if you are looking for him other than MasterTalk, it's Kumarasamy.
See,
this is why he told us just to call him Brenden from MasterTalk.
If I called my YouTube channel my name, guys, no one would find
Nobody would find you.
I would just be in a desert.
Breadcrumbs, right? So Kumar's like Harold and Kumar. That's easy. Right? And then,
I do enjoy the movies. It was really good.
Yeah, what's not to love? And then, so Kumar is easy, right? Kumar. And then Asami is exactly what, like, it sounds like a sandwich, right? Like, I need a Sammy.
It's
kind of like that, but it's Asami.
If that
so
helps
you. Love Harold and Kumar and you
Hey, I think I
sandwiches.
need a counselor, you two. That's my thing.
You're in the right place.
Brenden just doesn't know what to do with us, I feel like. All right, so Brenden is the founder of MasterTalk on YouTube. And so he helps people who are trying to build up their brand, and speakers and coaches help bring their message to life and really put a lot of personal emphasis on their message and make that message really, really clear. So Brenden, can you tell us more about MasterTalk and about your channel there on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. MasterTalk is a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking YouTube. So think of it like this, in the context of counseling. If you can't communicate your ideas in a way that the other person across the room doesn't understand it or doesn't want to absorb that information, it is very difficult to get that transformation. The same way that I believe that there is an idea that all of us have, and by MasterTalk, I guess that's what I'm trying to do with the free videos, is to try and get everyone to have access to those free communication tools in the same way that you teach a lot of tips and tricks on how to manage your mental health on the show. So yeah, that's pretty much what MasterTalk is.
Yeah, so your audience, the people who are watching you on YouTube, these are professional speakers, but these are also, I would imagine, entrepreneurs who speak for a living and represent their field, represent their expertise, and represent their companies. Is that right?
Yeah, and they're also 8-year-olds, 16-year-olds in high school, and I've gotten some interesting emails from people. People who are in their 30s and they're mental health advocates, people in their 20s. I think it's very interesting to see the broad range of people who end up finding public speaking a worthwhile subject to learn, because communication is important for all of us, right?
So
Absolutely.
8-year-olds you've
Yeah.
had coaching.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. I love that idea because public speaking is not, it's very, very seldom that public speaking is a comfortable situation for most people. And what is that where people would rather be in the coffin, right, than delivering the eulogy? It's scarier to like fall off a cliff to a lot of people than to give a presentation that other people are going to hear. And so what you're really tackling here is not only that initial fear. I would imagine that people who are coming to you have kind of gotten past that and are doing speaking now, but I would imagine too that there is still some part of that lingers, that keeps people from getting to the next level of where they want to be.
I think the way that I see it, you two, is this idea that communication is every interaction that we have in our lives. And once we start to understand that communication has everything to do with what we do, then we can ask ourselves empowering questions to focus on this skill. So one question I like to ask people is, how would the world change if you were an incredible speaker? And by the way, that same question applies to what you two are trying to achieve. How would the world change if you had solid mental health? If you know exactly what your direction in life was, if you knew what you wanted to achieve and how to get there, and how those mental roadblocks are getting in your way from getting to point B.
Yeah, I think what you're really identifying is what is the purpose of what we're doing. I think a lot of times we focus so much on the how, and we think, well, I want to do this, but I can't because this, that, the other, right? So like, I want to read more books, but I can't because I don't have time during my day. When I get home from work, I'm too tired, right? And so what you're identifying is, instead of going straight into the how, we use in our agency, we use the book Getting Things Done by David Allen. And he talks so much about how quickly doers, right, people who get things done, want to jump right into next actions. We are so tempted by what is the next thing. And with the next thing to do comes those boundaries, comes those barriers, and then we shut it down. And instead, what you're describing is that instead we start focusing on the why first, right? The start with why. We start looking at purpose, and we start looking at it from a bigger perspective than ourselves. So with mental health care, with public speaking, the message that you're prescribing here is the same, which is that how is what I am going to do, how are the goals that I am setting going to impact the world, not just myself, not just my immediate life.
Absolutely. The more we start focusing on the bigger picture, the easier it is for us to focus on the goal. So if I never had a good reason to master public speaking, I want to get promoted at work, and that's it, why would I spend 5 hours a week practicing? There's no point. If I didn't want a better relationship with my kids, I don't have kids, but let's say I did, right? And I don't know how to communicate to them.
Is it nice?
It's nice.
Life is pretty good.
It's probably much quieter than your house.
It's a very quiet. It's very peaceful. Gives me time to write videos and whatnot. But the point is, because of that, like, if I want a better relationship with them, my fictional kids, well, then going to therapy, understanding how to manage my own mental health will help me manage theirs.
Absolutely. So I love that, nobody comes into a counseling office and says, I want better mental health, right? Like, nobody comes into, and I would assume for you that it's fairly rare that people would come in because they want to be they want to be a better speaker just to be a better speaker. So I love that. I'm sure they come into the counseling office saying, I want to I want my marriage to be better. I want to stop fighting with my kids. I want, like, my kid will not listen to me. They come in with, I want to achieve this goal in my life, improving our mental health in those day by day. That is how we get to that place. And that is how we achieve those goals. And for you, it sounds like communication is a tool. That's a skill that you're helping people to build. And then they're able to use that skill as a tool to achieve the things that they want to achieve.
Absolutely.
We had our most recent guest was a financial coach, and it's so interesting the parallels here, because we don't always think of like communication as currency, right? But I'm sure you would agree, like, communication is currency. And so in the same way that for Suzanne Johnson to be talking about money as a tool, right? It's just a tool to get what we want. It's not the end goal. And for Brenden from MasterTalk, communication, that is not the end goal, but it is a tool to get us to where we want to be.
Absolutely. And if you're very clear on what that thing is, for example, if you two want to be, the number one podcast in the world, well, to get there, communication is definitely going to be one of those barriers you'll want to cross. Even if you two are already pretty good at communication, but getting to a level that makes you world class. And that analogy can be applied to anybody who's listening for the relationship you have with your kids. I mean, if they don't understand what you're saying, I mean, it's going to be really hard to figure out what to get them to do and to be. So those are some things to think about.
Yeah, and I think that the type of communication really probably does, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because you're the expert here, but I would imagine that when you're working with clients, it's really important that the goal would drive what kind of communication that they would be working on, or which skills in terms of communication that they would be working on. So yeah, if our goal was to be the number one podcast, right, we'd have a totally different setup here, right? But when we look at what our goal is, we can say, okay, this is the kind of means that we want to do. That's why in counseling, we set those goals as the first thing that we do, because we want to make sure that we're not trying to help you with something you don't want help with, and that we are aiming towards that, because everything comes together for that goal.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I love that. Okay, so you let us know in your survey that you have not tried counseling.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But I do have coaches though.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked a lot on here about coaches and how when we're building a team around us of experts, we want, like, I always will have a good therapist. I always will have a good dentist. If I move across the state, the things I'm looking for is like, where's the best chiropractor? Like, what attorney do I want to use out here? What CPA do I want to use out here? What counselor do I want to use out here, right? And so we have to have all of these experts in our lives. And I think that, these various coaches that we have absolutely are part of that team, just the way our counselor is part of our team. So why have you not tried counseling?
That's a very good question. So the way that I think about this is this idea that if you're very clear on what you're achieving in your life and you want to keep going with it, and you feel you don't have any mental blocks, that's totally fine. But the one thing I do preach is you need somebody. Absolutely. It always starts at some point. Like I'm never going to say that counseling is a bad idea in the sense that as long as you have that peer group that are there to listen to your problems and there to help you, that's already the step in the right direction. So in my case, I think what I've given myself credit for, it's probably one of the few things I do give myself credit for, to be honest, is this idea that I have very clear direction in life. I believe that the quality of your life is solely determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. And the reason this is important is because if you learn to ask yourself the hard questions about life, like I did, I wrote my own funeral speech when I was 21, and I would ask questions like, what are you pretending not to know? Or if you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? And it's these series of questions that enables me to figure out exactly how to be great at what I do, but also have a clear direction for the remaining years of my life. And I hope to live a long one, but that's the way that I think about it. But the point I want to drive is most people can't get to that reasoning alone. Like most people can't just pop up a bunch of questions and just sit there and answer them. It's actually very difficult to hold themselves accountable to such an exercise. And that's why I think counseling and mentorship or coaching, I kind of put that all in the same basket, even if they serve different categories and ways of being, is it allows you to have that accountability piece of having those conversations. It's similar to a marriage. Really good marriages need therapy, not because the marriage is going bad, but rather to make sure it's going good, to make sure it keeps going good, right? To make sure there's like a planned schedule so they're still talking about things and they don't let anything slip and fall through the cracks. So same thing with this, like, and the way that I've done it in my life, because I haven't really had any major life event that's impacted me in a significant way yet, and I'm fortunate because of that. So I focus mostly on coaches. So I have a high performance slash life coach slash health coach who kind of just takes care of everything. And I've been getting really great results with that individual. But then over time, if I start to have more mental health issues that I feel he can't solve for me, then I'll definitely hire another coach to help me along the journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like the idea of that, we don't always need a specific mental health counselor for a specific reason, and so I really like that idea. And I like that you are being intentional about who you are adding to your team. The fact that you have a team is so important, because I think that is one of the biggest barriers for people of why they don't try counseling, is because there's this idea of like, I can do it on my own. We're here in Iowa, we're in the Midwest, right? We are in the heart of America. And for us here, there is such and I would imagine a little bit different culturally from Canada, where here in the United States, especially in the Midwest, there's such a sense of like individuality is everything. And you need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you need to get it done. And if you can't do it, you're weak, right? Like there's such a sense of that here of like self-sufficiency. And we're losing such a sense of community. I feel like the Midwest used to be extremely communal, because when everybody was on farms, it was like you had to be. If you got sick, somebody else had to feed your pigs and somebody else had to slaughter your chickens for you. And so you got to...
You make Iowa sound fun.
I know. I'm vegan, so somebody else would slaughter their own chickens. But anyway, we used to have that. And so I think that we've gotten away from that a lot. And there is this idea of like, we need to be independent. We need to be self-sufficient on our own all the time. And I think that really gets in the way of being able to bring these experts into our lives so that we can benefit from what they know. And it is a good point that a mental health counselor is specifically that. You don't go to your mental health counselor for financial coaching, right? You don't go to your mental health counselor for health coaching. Those are specific coaches that you add onto your team, because you're not a one-dimensional person. You are a full person with a full spectrum of needs and challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way of thinking about this is, depending on what your goals are as an individual and what you want out of your life, you need to pick the right groups of individuals to help you achieve that outcome. So for me, what I always say is, for you to get to the goal, there's always a person who's already achieved that goal, right? So if you want a better family, someone else has already done that. If you want a YouTube channel, someone has already built that. If you want to build a great family, someone has also already achieved that, or kids, or relationships with the kids. So for you, you need to figure out who are the people who have the results that you have that you can replicate. So for example, if I admired the family that you had, Julie, then I would ask you for help, but depending on my own life goals. So it's all about aligning the right people and the right team to get the best results.
Yeah, absolutely. And with mental health counseling, it isn't, we always talk about right fit, right, with counselors, and we talk about right fit, but with coaches, there's a difference there with coaches, because with mental health counselors, our focus is on the mental health information, right? They're taking the information that we're giving them about who we are, and they're taking the information and education that they have about mental health, and they're combining those, right, to serve each person individually. Whereas coaches bring a lot more of, it's more like mentorship, right? Where they've lived this experience, they're kind of walking you through it. Whereas counselors, like, I don't know what religion my therapist is. Like, I don't know what, right? Like, I don't want to know for that purpose. But if this person was a relationship coach, for example, I would imagine I would have a lot more of that. It's a different kind of relationship. Is that right?
That's true. I agree. That's definitely very accurate in the sense of both of these individuals served very different purposes. And in some cases, I would actually argue a lot of cases, a lot of my friends actually have both, right? But I think the key is to invest in something. That doesn't necessarily mean spending a lot of money at the beginning. It just means figuring out what it means or what it feels like to be surrounded by someone who's getting you to the next step of whatever that journey is for you.
It's kind of a practice in, whether you start with a coach or you start with a counselor. I think the discipline that we're trying to build in ourselves, if we haven't done any of that before, is the ability to follow. And to learn from somebody else's mistakes. My dad always said when I was growing up, and he still says this, he says, I've made so many mistakes in my life. Like, guess what? You don't have to. You don't have to make those ones, right? Like, you can make your own different ones, but you don't have to make these ones. I mean, with that, if we've got these people around us and if we can practice following, right? There's this idea culturally, I feel like, that everybody's got to be a leader, right? And like, you don't want to be a follower. You want to be unique and stand out, and you want to be a disruptor, right? And all of that is fine, but the best leaders are also typically very good followers, right? So you need to have both. My daughter and I were hiking a week or so ago, and we started talking about being a leader and being a follower because my daughter's 4. We were out on this trail and she kept wanting to be the leader, right? And I said, this is great. This is going to make her walk faster. Okay. You lead, right? And if you don't lead, I'm going to keep walking the same pace. And if you're not going at a normal pace, if you're like dragging your feet and picking up sticks and stuff, then I'm going to, at my normal pace, get ahead of you, and then I'm the leader, right? And that's just a natural consequence. We're walking, and she's kind of dawdling, and so I get in front and I say, "Yep, I'm the leader now." And then she starts walking in front of me and starts like swerving when I try to pass her, right? And so we had a really long conversation about, like, when you're the leader, the most important thing is to look straight ahead, look at your own lane, right? And don't worry about your competition. Don't be swerving and taking up more of your time, going slower, trying to get this other person, right, to stumble, when we can just continue going straight in our own path and we're going to actually be ahead. The second thing that we were talking about was taking turns in leadership, because we've seen a lot of leaders who were not able to be followers, right? And there's benefit to that idea of, I'm a leader, I am going to be a leader in my field, but there are all of these other people in different fields that are doing things that can benefit me in my field that, I can learn from. So I think about Steve Jobs and how he was a leader, but he was not a follower, right? And so in that uniqueness, change the world way, that is wonderful, but also in the way that he treated his team, the way that he ran his company when he was in charge the first time, he really would have benefited from being able to be a follower in those capacities. And
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's the discipline that we're trying to build, right? In terms of, is that willingness to be a follower, whether it's working with a counselor or whether it's working with a coach.
I'm with you. Absolutely. I think this idea that understanding how both to lead and to follow other people is the best way to lead. Like, if you can't understand or have the empathy of really going to somebody else's perspective and going to somebody else's lens, that's how you become a better person. And you see a perspective you've never seen before. And I think that definitely applies whether it's counseling or communication, because by understanding how different people think, you'll start to realize things like this. Do Republicans and Democrats really have that much difference? Like, they both watch the same Netflix specials, they both have the same families, they both eat the same hamburgers. What's all the fuss about? Right? I don't get it, right? That kind of stuff. You arrive at those conclusions and you go, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Just matters what that person is trying to achieve and what their value system is.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on here is that when we are willing to put ourselves under somebody else's guidance, we do make ourselves better equipped with that experience to guide other people, because now we know we've either learned one of two things. We've learned how to do it, or we've learned how not to do it. And Chrissa and I, we worked together at a previous place, and we learned a lot about what not to do.
Yeah.
And so that was still a really, really great experience for us, right? I wouldn't trade that experience, because I think there's this idea when you start seeing a counselor, when you start seeing a coach, of like, well, what if it's bad? Well, what if it is bad? Like, good, use that. We can use that. When I go to see a therapist and they do something that is either not ethical or that is just weird, I can use that in my own agency and go, okay, we're training this now, right? We're specifically saying, don't do this or do this. And we're able to use that to benefit other people. So I think in that way, we as people, like, I think there's this sense of like, we gather all this stuff and then we just like keep it, right? Like hold it. And instead what we're looking at and what you're talking about here, I think, is the ability to bring all of that input in and then pass it through us, right? Pass it through us to the next person. Because if we see something great in terms of how somebody is teaching or how somebody explained something to us, we can then pass that on and help other people too.
Right. I'm with you. Absolutely. The more perspectives, the better. It improves our lens and how we think about the world, and better solutions and how we can do it. And that's why I think counseling is great. It adds a new perspective to that lens so you can see better and clearer.
You know those like old school glasses readers that they used to use, right? With the little, you take the little slide of the glasses and you put it in there and they would change it out. I was watching, I was in a hotel recently and we don't have cable. And so I was in this hotel and I was so excited because I got to watch Storage Wars, like for the first time ever. And like, I never have cable, so I was really excited. I watched the Storage Wars and they had found this one from like the 40s, and it was so cool, right? But I was thinking as I was watching this, I was like, man, this is a good video to make here, because when we're thinking about all of the different ways of thinking about our lives, thinking about our world, thinking about our contribution, there are all of these different perspectives, right, that we can choose and pull out and look at either the situation or our lives as a bigger picture through these different lenses. So the great thing about having different kinds of coaches, having different experts in our lives, having a counselor in our life is that, okay, when I'm talking to Suzanne Johnson, and I pull out my financial coach lens and I look at this problem, right? Maybe the problem is that I have to do a renovation on my house and my husband and I are fighting about it, okay? So I can look at this problem. I can pull out my Suzanne Johnson lens, I can put it in there and I can look at that through a financial coaching perspective. Then I can pull out Dr. Craig Springer, right? He's a mental health counselor. I can pull that out. I can look at that and I can look at how my mental health symptoms, how my mental wellness is contributing to this problem, and also how my partners might be contributing to this problem, right? So I can look at it through the Dr. Craig Springer lens, or I can pull it out and I can look at it through the Brenden from MasterTalk lens, and I can say, okay, where is our communication breaking down, right? Have I told my partner why this is important? Like, have I told him, where I'm coming from with this? And have I listened to what he's tried to communicate to me? So I can pull all of these different lenses out. I can pull out my Amber lens, right? She's an attorney, and I can look through that. And so there are all of these different lenses that I can look at a problem with. Without that, I'm really not going to have the best perspective on this problem, which means if I don't understand the problem, I can't understand the solution. I think this is kind of what you're getting at here, of all of these different perspectives and how that can really help us with solving the challenges and the barriers in our lives.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's this idea of how do we bring those different lenses to the table so that we can see the picture a bit more clearer. And then from that picture, we could say, wow, now I know exactly what I need to do. I think that's what coaching does, is that it compresses time, right? It compresses the time that it takes for us to achieve a certain goal from a couple of months to a couple of years to try and figure something out on our own versus just a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a good point, because, we talk a fair amount about time budgeting and about how, like, every February I have a birthday and I have a midlife crisis. every single year I go, what am I doing with my life? What is happening around me? And it boosts me every year to say, okay, what is the new challenge, right? This year, 2020, what are we going to do? And so I know that midlife crisis is coming up here in a couple of months. I'm like preparing for it.
Midlife crisis.
It is, yeah.
You're not old enough, I feel like, to have a
third life crisis.
Yeah.
But what I think about is that, time is a non-renewable resource. So time is like one of the only resources we can't renew. So money, we can get more money. If we go broke, we can get more money. We can earn a job. We can trade our time for that money. And the same thing with any resource, right? Like if I run out of, I don't know, toothpicks, I can get more toothpicks, right? But when it comes to time, I can't replace that time. And so if I can hack my way, right? Like I use time blocking and I use time budgeting. If I can preserve time by kind of what you're saying, like filtering it down into something that is more potent, right? Then it can take me less time to do the things that I want to achieve, which means that I can achieve more things. And so I really love that idea. I've never really thought about that in terms of the counseling perspective, but it's really, really true. It can take us years to have an insight about ourselves, right? It might take us years to stumble into a negative belief that we're having about ourselves or about our past. It could take us years of suffering through post-traumatic stress disorder without having a name to call it, without having an understanding about it, without knowing where that's coming into our lives. But if we go to counseling, we can shorten that amount of time, which then gives us more life after that to be able to enjoy a life, knowing what this is, knowing how to manage it, right? And knowing what to do with it. I really like that idea of like concentrating the task down into a shorter period of time.
Absolutely. Completely agree. What about you, Chrissa? What do you think about all this?
Sorry, just listening.
thoughts?
No, I agree. Like how Julie was talking about, like with PTSD diagnosis, for example, like, yeah, if you don't know why you're feeling this way or what's going on in your life, and then having someone to talk to about that and getting that diagnosis sooner could help you with those symptoms and really relieving like all that stress that comes along with like, what's wrong with me or how do I fix this? Getting that help sooner and having someone to talk to about it is the point of counseling and why we do go to it, to help fix that. Because now you do have a diagnosis. Now you know what you can do to help work on that. And they can give you different ideas to do in sessions as well and through services.
It's this idea of that you can't replace time, right? So you might as well use your time very wisely rather than just thinking about the money involved with it. So try and optimize both.
Yeah, there's such a trade-off sometimes with where we get so focused on money that we exchange our time for it in ways that don't necessarily make sense. For example, we had all of these, well, we have a garden every year, okay? And the garden is a huge, like it saves some money, right? Because we eat out of it all summer and then we eat what we froze in the winter. But time-wise, it's not a great investment, right? Like every spare moment of the last 2-3 weeks, I've been processing pumpkins, like baking pumpkin seeds, freezing pumpkin puree, right? We got hundreds and hundreds of pounds of pumpkins and then we're processing them out. And they're really, the thing is that this is the first year that I've processed pumpkins. But if I were able to, and YouTube is such a great resource because I was able to find little ways to cut that time down. So it's still taking me more time, but the first couple of pumpkins I was scooping out the seeds by hand, right? And all of the stringy stuff on the inside. And then I was cutting it and baking it, or I was cutting it, I was pureeing it, I was baking it. And then YouTube is such a great example because there are experts on YouTube who have done this every year for their entire lives. They've grown up doing this. And so they're able to tell me like, hey, after my 15th year of doing the pumpkins this way and scooping it out with a spoon, I realized or learned that you can take a blender, like a handheld electric mixer, and you can turn that on and scrape the inside of the pumpkin with that. And it takes exponentially less time every time to get all the seeds and insides out of it, right? So that is a trick that would have taken me my whole life maybe, right, to realize this and learn this and cut down that pumpkin processing time. But because of YouTube, because I was out there seeking, okay, who's the expert on pumpkins, right? And there are entire YouTube channels that are about processing food, right? And how to make this process quicker. They had figured that out through their own experience. And so I was able to benefit from that, and it saved me time. I just really love that idea of we can concentrate down our time by using the experts around us. And that means seeking them out. It's an investment of time, right? So I think sometimes what gets in the way of people coming into counseling or getting a coach is, oh my gosh, that's an extra hour a week. I don't have that time. I don't have time to do that, right? Like, do you hear that sometimes? People are like, I don't have time to meet with you every week.
I think the key for me is it's all about making time for your priorities. Like for me, I have a day job, full-time job, and I also do MasterTalk, and I also do podcasts, and I also do all this stuff. So how do you manage all of that? It's all about prioritization. If you understand what the priorities in your life are, you will focus your energy on those things. That's why what I recommend people implement as an exercise is Warren Buffett's focus framework. So I'll tell you guys a story. So Warren Buffett, for those who know, is this very famous investor. He was on a private plane once with his pilot. He looks at his pilot one day and he goes, "What do you want to do in life?" And he just looked at him and said, I just like flying my planes and enjoying my life, so not much. But Warren's a bit pushy, so he goes, no, I want you to do an exercise for me. Write 20 things that you want to achieve in your life, like bucket list items. It could be like travel to 50 countries, it could be start a YouTube channel, a podcast, something like that. So then the pilot goes ahead and writes those 20 things. And then after, Warren looks at him and says, pick 5 of those things, like the top 5. He picks the top 5. And then Warren looks at it and says, only focus on those 5 things because you won't have time in your life to do the other 50. And I think that was really powerful because when we learn to prioritize what we care about, our time, our resources, our money will flow in that direction. So for me, I spend a lot of my money on my YouTube channel for the production quality that I have because that's where I want to prioritize my resources, my time on, or when I guest on shows, or when I write videos. So for you, when you figure out what those priorities are, it's going to be a lot easier for you to manage your time and invest the right resources to make the money back and also make the investment worthwhile. Like the way I think about it is the hour of coaching that I spend with, the people I talk to every week or every 2 weeks. Well, I that like the return on that is like 100x, and I'm not underplaying that at all. So I highly recommend it.
I like that too. It reminds me of, when we talk about money, and Warren Buffett talks about investing, right? Investing your money instead of spending your money, and what a difference that makes. And the same is true with time, but like nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about, is this an investment of time or is this a time that I'm spending time? For example, there are things that are spending time, like watching Netflix, right? Like that's spending time. And then there are things that are investments of time. And sometimes they can be the same thing, just it's how we use it, right? So watching Storage Wars in the hotel, okay, that was like, I set into that to like, okay, I'm going to spend some time here, okay? This is like an impulse purchase, right? I was not looking at that as an investment. At the same time, it was a really stressful week. We were displaced because of COVID. And so for me, that really was an investment of time. I needed to zone out for an hour. And also I saw this really cool lens thing and said, hey, that's a great YouTube idea. We're gonna do a video on that. And so it's really how we use the things that are coming into our lives. Are we using this as time spent, or am I using it as an investment? And if I look at my therapy appointment, or if I look at my coaching appointment every week and I go into it with the mindset of like, this is spending an hour of my time here, this is spending an hour of my time here, then that is going to be spent time. But if I look at that as I'm investing an hour here, I'm investing an hour here, then that is going to multiply out and save me time in the long run. So when I was processing pumpkins, I could have said, I don't have time to be looking at YouTube right now. I'm busy processing pumpkins, right? But what I did instead is invested that 30 minutes into, hey, I'm going to watch 2 videos on how to do this. And then that saved me, right, probably 6 hours overall of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an investment. What am I doing with my day? When I look at my time block, is everything on here or most things on here an investment of time? Even if it's relaxing time, or even if it's like walking on the treadmill and reading a book, that's an investment of time if I'm doing it with that mindset. Yeah, so what else? Is there anything else that we should know about MasterTalk? We can just find you on YouTube if we search MasterTalk.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who want to check out MasterTalk, the YouTube channel, it's MasterTalk in one word, and you can just find me over there. But I think the way that I'd love to close this off is this idea that communication, whether you are a counselor or whether you're someone who wants to do counseling or someone who wants to get involved in and participate in it, understand that the better that you get at communication, the easier it is to not just communicate your goals, but also your feelings, your emotions in a way that other people can understand them. And if we all started to do that more as a society, I just feel life would be a much better place. So I hope you take advantage of the free resources that Chrissa and Julie are giving you and that I'm giving you through my YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The great thing about YouTube is that it is free, right? It does
It's free,
cost
yeah.
a time
Yeah.
investment, but it doesn't cost a money investment. And if we're a person who's just starting out going like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I need a counselor. I don't know if I need a coach, right? I don't know if my communication could get me to the point that I want to be. Then YouTube is such a great resource for that. And you guys can find Brenden there at MasterTalk and watch those videos, and they can subscribe. And how often do you post?
I post every week, every Sunday.
Awesome. Every
same
Sunday.
day.
Okay, so on Sundays,
While they're doing the laundry.
while you're doing your laundry, you can listen to You Need a Counselor. You switch right over to MasterTalk and you listen to MasterTalk too. I use YouTube as podcasting sometimes. I just put it on and I just listen while I'm doing other tasks. Yeah, that's a great way to be able to find Brenden there. Yeah, we would love to help you guys out. If you do find that you're open to building a team, if you say, I need a team of experts around me, right? Life is hard. Life is hard to do on our own. And it would take us thousands and thousands of lifetimes to learn the things that we can learn from a team of experts around us. So if you are a person who is open to starting to build that team and you think that a mental health counselor could be a really great person to start on that team, go ahead and give us a call at Heart and Solutions. We can meet with you on the phone, or we can meet with you in our offices. We've got 9 locations across Iowa where you can come into the office and meet with us, or you can meet with us over the phone. Or if you've got kiddos ages 4 to 18 or 19, we can actually come into the house with you and work with your family there. A lot of the situations that we come into when we do those in-home sessions are that families are needing help with communication. And so what we're going to do is actually let our behavioral health counselors know about MasterTalk, because I think that some of those videos could be really, really helpful. The fact that you're telling me that you've got 8-year-olds who are into this, I think that it could be really, really a helpful tool for our BHIS counselors to be using even in session, just watching an episode of MasterTalk and talking through what that means for that person in their life. So if you've got kiddos, just know that like communication is for everybody, and communication is going to be helpful to every single age. And the earlier we can learn it, the better, right? The better outcomes we're going to have. Just like kids counseling, communication counseling is going to be really, really helpful for kids too. So you can call us at Heart and Solutions, 800-531-4236.
Yep. And like Julie mentioned at the beginning, and we kind of just talked about, we post every Sunday at 5. So if you have a bunch of laundry throughout the week, you can save it up and watch or listen to us and listen to Brenden as well. So also will be posted before Monday morning. Then some Monday mornings while you're on your drive to work or school, you can listen to us then as well and help us or let us help you get motivated to contact a counselor or schedule with your counselor that you already have that week as well.
Yeah, if you've got questions about counseling or how to start counseling, go ahead and message those to us on our Facebook page, You Need a Counselor Podcast. Also on our Instagram, you can DM us there. But also, if you've got questions for Brenden, if you've been watching MasterTalk and you go, okay, I've got questions for Brenden, but I kind of want like an inside way to get to him, right? Then definitely send those over to us, because we would love to have Brenden on the podcast again. And if we get those questions specifically for Brenden here into our inboxes on Instagram or Facebook, then in our next interview with Brenden, we can go ahead and address your specific questions here on the podcast. So we hope that you'll join us again, Brenden.
Of course, such a pleasure, you two. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, so I'm Chrissa Brown.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.